When we talk about all women, the first thing we need to understand is that physical beauty in itself is not the same as value. We live in a time where men are conditioned to believe that a beautiful face, a slim body, a certain style of makeup or fashion, that this is everything. The algorithms on social media, the industries of entertainment and adult content, they all bombard men with images of women who look flawless, desirable, untouchable. And without realizing it, many men begin to measure a woman's worth and even their own worth through this narrow lens of physical attraction. But here's the truth. Hotness is not value. It is an illusion crafted by society, by filters, by makeup, and by the strategic use of sexuality. You see, beauty is powerful, but it is not permanent. It is fragile, it fades, and it can be manufactured. What's far more dangerous than beauty itself is the illusion it creates in the mind of a man who hasn't built his inner strength. He starts to project qualities onto a woman simply because of how she looks. He assumes that if she is attractive, then she must also be kind, loyal, intelligent, or worthy of his devotion. But that is projection, not reality. This illusion is the foundation of manipulation. Escorts, OnlyFans creators, sugar babies, they know the psychology of men. They understand that most men don't look past the surface. They don't ask, does this woman have depth? Does she have loyalty? Does she bring peace into my life? Instead, they get hypnotized by the outer package and assume the rest. And that's exactly why so many men fall into the trap of paying for attention, chasing validation, or sacrificing their self-respect just to stay close to beauty. But here's the irony. Beauty without depth often becomes a burden. A woman who has built her entire identity around looks usually demands constant validation. She thrives on attention. She is not there to serve or support a man's vision. She is there to consume his energy, his resources, his focus. And if a man cannot see through this illusion, he becomes a servant to her beauty rather than a leader in his own life. Think about it this way: if hotness was true value, then the richest, most powerful men in the world would never get divorced, never be cheated on, never feel lonely. But we know that isn't true because beauty attracts, but it cannot sustain. What sustains a relationship, what creates legacy, is not how a woman looks, but who she is when no one is watching. So the real challenge for men today is to train their eyes and their mind to look deeper, to stop confusing attraction with compatibility, to stop thinking that desire equals loyalty. When you begin to see beauty for what it is, a spark, not a foundation, you take away its power to blind you. And in doing so, you reclaim your power as a man. Remember, this beauty can draw your attention, but only depth deserves your commitment. Once we move beyond the illusion of beauty, we have to confront the reality of what many men are actually engaging with when it comes to escorts, OnlyFans creators, or sugar babies. And that reality is very simple. This is not romance. This is not intimacy. This is not love. This is business. The business of desire is one of the most profitable industries in the world because it taps into the most powerful driver of human behavior, sexual energy. Every single message you receive, every picture you see, every carefully written caption, it's all part of a transaction. The woman on the screen isn't sitting there thinking about you personally. She is thinking about how to maximize the time you spend hooked on her content, how to ensure you renew your subscription, how to keep you feeling like you have some special access. It's a system, and you are the customer. This is why so many men find themselves caught in a cycle of spending. At first, it feels harmless. You tip an escort for extra attention. You subscribe to a creator to see exclusive content. You support a sugar baby thinking it's a mutually beneficial arrangement. But very quickly, what seemed like a choice becomes a pattern. And here's why: because the business model is designed to keep you addicted. Just like a casino never lets you win too much, these women never give you complete fulfillment. They give you just enough validation, just enough attention, just enough illusion of closeness to keep you coming back. Now, let's be clear, I am not demonizing these women. They are doing what makes sense in a marketplace where demand is endless. The responsibility is not on them. It is on men to recognize what is happening. The truth is, men who engage in these transactions are not buying intimacy. They are renting attention. They are paying to feel desired, paying to feel important, paying to fill a void that can never be filled with money. And here's the psychological trap. Once you start associating intimacy with payment, your brain begins to rewire itself. You stop believing that you can earn love through your character, your values, or your masculine presence. You start believing that you must buy it. And once you internalize that belief, you hand over all your power. You are no longer a man who can command respect. You are simply a consumer who is forever dependent on the next transaction. This is why the business of desire is so dangerous, not because it exists, but because men allow it to shape their identity. They start living as clients instead of leaders, as buyers instead of builders. And when a man forgets his role as a creator of value in the world, he becomes easy to exploit. So remember, this intimacy that is bought is never real. The moment you pay for attention, you are not being loved, you are being marketed to. Once you recognize that this is a business, you must also recognize the tools of that business. And the most powerful tool these women use is not their appearance, it's psychology. The women who succeed in these industries understand one thing very clearly: men are not paying for their bodies, they are paying for how these women make them feel. Think about it. If it was just about physical beauty, the internet is already overflowing with free content. You don't need to spend a single dollar to see an attractive woman. So why do millions of men still pay? Because these women have mastered the art of emotional manipulation. They know exactly how to trigger your dopamine, how to feed your ego, and how to create the illusion of intimacy. For example, an OnlyFans creator might message you directly, call you handsome, or act like you are her favorite subscriber. An escort might smile, laugh at your jokes, touch your arm in just the right way to make you feel important. A sugar baby might send you a sweet text out of nowhere, just enough to remind you that you are special to her. None of this is love, it's strategy. It's designed to bypass your rational mind and go straight to your emotional core. And here's where most men underestimate the game. They assume they are the ones in control because they are the ones spending money. But in reality, the man who spends is the man being controlled. Why? Because these women understand male weakness. They know that men crave validation. They know that men want to feel respected, admired, and desired. They know how to give you just enough of those feelings to keep you invested without ever giving you something real. This is why so many men get addicted. It's not about lust, it's about the emotional high. It's the same mechanism as gambling or drugs. You keep coming back hoping for that little hit of excitement, that small rush of being noticed. But every time you return, you are giving away more of your time, your focus, and your power. Now let's take this even deeper. When you allow yourself to be manipulated like this, you are not only losing money, you are reshaping your self-image. You begin to believe that you are only worthy of attention if you pay for it, that you are only interesting if you are useful to her, that your masculinity is dependent on her validation. This is the most dangerous form of psychological slavery because it keeps you trapped in an endless cycle of neediness. And here's the harsh truth: the woman who manipulates you in this way does not even have to love you, respect you, or care about you. She only has to study you. Once she understands your patterns, your triggers, your insecurities, she owns you. And the moment she owns your mind, she owns your life. So never forget this. The greatest currency in this game is not money, it's your psychology. And the man who cannot control his own psychology will always be controlled by someone else. Once you understand how this game of manipulation works, you begin to see the true cost of it, and it's far greater than money. Because when you buy into this system of simulated intimacy, you are not just handing over your resources, you are handing over pieces of your soul. Think about what intimacy really is. At its core, intimacy is about trust, vulnerability, and connection. It is the bond between two people who choose to share not just their bodies, but their lives, their fears, their dreams. That is what gives intimacy its power. It is not a transaction. It is an exchange of truth. But when intimacy is simulated, when it is bought, when it is performed rather than lived, it loses its very essence. It becomes hollow. The danger here is subtle but devastating. A man who repeatedly engages in these transactional relationships begins to rewire his understanding of closeness. He starts to confuse performance with authenticity. He begins to accept that intimacy is something you can schedule, something you can negotiate, something you can pay for. And without realizing it, he is destroying his capacity to recognize or sustain real love. This is why so many men who spend years in these cycles struggle when they meet a genuine woman. They don't know how to connect anymore. They expect scripted responses, instant gratification, and endless validation. But real women, real relationships don't work that way. They require patience, responsibility, and emotional presence. And if a man has trained himself to believe that intimacy is just a service, he will never have the strength to build something meaningful. Even worse, the cost is not only emotional, it is spiritual. When you allow yourself to invest in false intimacy, you begin to erode your self-respect. Deep down, every man knows when he is not being truly loved. He knows when he is paying for attention, when he is being entertained rather than cherished. And that knowledge creates shame. The more you indulge in it, the more you start to feel hollow, disconnected, unworthy. This is why so many men describe feeling empty even after spending hundreds or thousands of dollars. Because what they are craving cannot be bought. It can only be earned through authenticity. And then comes the final blow, wasted time. Every hour a man spends chasing simulated intimacy is an hour he could have invested in building himself, his career, his health, his purpose, his legacy. The women who exploit this know it well. As long as they can keep you distracted with false attention, you will not rise into your true power. And that is the greatest loss. Not the money you spent, but the man you never became. So remember, this false intimacy doesn't just drain your wallet, it drains your will. And the man who trades authenticity for illusion is not just losing love, he is losing himself. If we peel back another layer, we find one of the most seductive illusions of all: sugar dating. On the surface, it appears to be a simple arrangement. A man provides resources and in return, a woman provides companionship, beauty, or affection. Many men convince themselves that this is somehow more authentic than paying an escort or subscribing to online content, because it feels like a relationship. She goes out with you, she texts you, she spends time with you. But when you look deeper, you realize it is not love. It is still a transaction. What is actually being exchanged here is power. The man brings financial security, access, or status. The woman brings temporary attention, validation, and physical presence. Both sides know the unspoken rules. If the money stops, the affection stops. If the resources dry up, the so-called relationship collapses overnight. That is not intimacy, that is dependency. This is where so many men deceive themselves. They say, but she really likes me. She chooses to be here. And maybe for a moment it feels that way. But if her loyalty is tied to what you provide, then it is not loyalty, it is leverage. She is not with you for who you are, but for what you can give. And when a man builds his identity on that kind of conditional acceptance, he is building his life on quicksand. Worse still, sugar dating often reinforces a man's insecurities. Instead of learning how to connect with women through his character, his leadership, and his vision, he begins to rely on external rewards. He says to himself, I can only keep her if I spend. I can only matter if I provide. And that belief eats away at his masculine confidence. Because deep down he knows the truth: the relationship is not built on love. It is built on an exchange rate. And what happens when the exchange is no longer beneficial? She leaves, quickly, without guilt, because there was never a foundation of loyalty to begin with. And the man is left not only with an empty wallet, but with an emptier heart. He realizes too late that what he thought was intimacy was nothing more than a contract that expired. But there is a bigger tragedy here. Every hour a man spends in this cycle is an hour he could have invested in building himself into the kind of man who attracts genuine love. A man of value never has to buy attention because women of quality are naturally drawn to his presence. He does not have to negotiate affection because his life itself commands respect. Sugar dating is not just a financial trap. It is a distraction from becoming the man you were meant to be. So understand this clearly: when a woman is with you only for what you can provide, she is not your partner, she is your dependent. And no dependent will ever build your legacy after stripping away the illusions, after exposing the business of desire, the psychology of manipulation, the cost of simulated intimacy, and the truth about sugar dating. One question remains: what do men do with this knowledge? Do they stay trapped in the cycle, or do they rise above it? The answer lies in reclaiming masculine power. Because the real problem is not that these women exist or that these industries thrive. The real problem is that too many men have abandoned their role as leaders, builders, and protectors of their own destiny. They have allowed their hunger for validation to make them weak, dependent, and exploitable. And the only way out of this cycle is to stop chasing illusions and start building reality. A man who knows his value never pays for attention. He doesn't need to. Because when a man develops his character, sharpens his mind, disciplines his body, and builds his legacy, he naturally becomes magnetic. He doesn't have to beg for love. He doesn't have to buy loyalty, and he doesn't have to rent intimacy. Women of quality recognize the strength of such a man, and they want to be a part of his vision, not because of what he can give them, but because of who he is. But to reach that level, a man has to make a decision. He has to stop wasting his energy on cheap validation and start investing it into himself. Every dollar spent on false intimacy could have been invested in building his future. Every hour wasted chasing attention could have been spent mastering his craft. Every ounce of energy drained by temporary pleasures could have been fueling his purpose. This is why reclaiming power is not just about avoiding traps, it is about redefining masculinity. It's about realizing that your worth does not come from how many women notice you, but from how much value you create in the world. It's about recognizing that intimacy is not something you buy, it's something you attract when you live with integrity, strength, and vision. And here's the deeper truth. When a man truly steps into his power, he becomes immune to manipulation. The compliments don't sway him, the attention doesn't blind him, and the illusions don't tempt him, because he knows who he is and he knows what he's building. That is the man women respect. That is the man other men admire. And that is the man who never has to lower himself to transactions, because his very presence commands loyalty. So let this be the shift in your mindset. Stop being a consumer of fantasies and start being a creator of reality. Stop renting affection and start earning respect. Stop giving away your power and start living like a man who knows that he is the prize. Because in the end, the truth is simple. When you rise into your true masculine power, love doesn't need to be bought. It will find you.